Good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. right now. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jessica, and I'll be the moderator for this discussion. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the day, so please use the chat to submit your questions as we go along, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. And to test our abilities in the chat, go ahead and use it to tell us what school you're joining from as we take a minute just to let a few more people sign on. If you're just joining in, welcome and thank you for participating. We're just taking a minute to have everyone use the chat to tell us which school they're coming from. And it is always amazing to see the number of schools represented. Our purpose in organizing this call was to create a place for our partners in campus recreation throughout the Northeast to share what decisions you're facing and what your strategies are as we head closer to reopening facilities whenever that time comes. At this point, I want to let our panelists introduce themselves, and then we will get right into our first topic. So Brandon, could you start us off with introductions?
My name is Brandon Ott. I'm the Assistant Director of Campus Recreation at IUP Student Co-op, which is at Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
Right. Marie?
Yes, I am Marie Terciano. I'm currently the Interim Director of Recreation and Wellness at Stony Brook University, which is a 4-year public institution out on Long Island, New York.
Whitney?
Whitney Kroll. I'm the director of the Bauer Center for Sports, Fitness, and Wellbeing at Elizabethtown College, a small private 4-year college in Pennsylvania.
Brian?
Hey guys, my name is Brian Wallace. I'm the Fitness Center Director at SUNY Oswego, and it's a kind of medium-sized institution in upstate New York.
And last but not least, Cindy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Cowden. I'm the Senior Associate Director at Campus Recreational Services at Binghamton University. Binghamton is located in the southern tier of New York, about 3 hours north of New York City. And I'm also the chair of the university's Healthy Campus Initiative.
Perfect. Thank you all for participating and sharing your experiences today. As we head into the discussion, quick reminder for our participants that you can write any questions you have in the chat, and I will read those questions out loud as we get into the question and answer session toward the end. So question number 1 is, what does reopening look like for you, and how do you plan to incorporate social distancing throughout your recreation facilities and programs? I know that that will look really different for each one of our schools, but Whitney, would you mind leading things off?
Sure. So I have to say that I am a new director, just a little bit over a year, and we just opened our 82,000 square foot facility in August of last year. So our fall semester was filled with grand openings and dedications and figuring out what we're going to do. And then our spring semester was filled with a global pandemic. So we've just been pretty much learning as we go and trying to figure things out as we go. So it's been pretty interesting. So that's kind of what we're doing with this reopening. In Pennsylvania, our governor has implemented a color coding system for reopening, red, yellow, and green. So at E-Town, our senior leadership administration is kind of following that similar protocol, but adding a blue phase to that. So our blue phase is how we operated pre-COVID-19. In that model, the red and the yellow phase, we would all be running virtually. The fitness centers would not be open. And then once we're in green, we would be able to come back to campus and kind of run at half speed. So within our college's color-coded system, our department has also come up with a multi-phased approach for opening, 3 different phases. So in phase 1, we would only use our cardio and selectorized equipment, and limit cardio equipment to every other piece. Reduce our stretching area capacity, and then completely close our strength area. We would adjust our changing room procedures. In our facility, we have combined shower changing rooms, so we can't shut those down. So we would limit one way in and one way out, shut our lockers down so no one can use our lockers. And there's only 4 of those, so we're thinking of using a ticketing system to only allow, at least 4 people in there at one time. We would also reduce group fitness classes, as well as offering virtual classes if people didn't feel comfortable coming in. In our lounges, reduce the amount of seating that we have and taking some of that seating away. Removing any equipment checkout and not allowing anyone to bring equipment in. Not allowing open recreation in our field house, only allowing running on the track. And then in that first phase, we wouldn't allow intramurals to take place. We have health and wellness programs, and we would run a hybrid approach for those, as well as in our demonstration kitchen, where some would be virtual and some would be a smaller, reduced class size. And then we have a relaxation room with a sleep pod in it, and for that first phase, we would keep that closed. So then after a little while, we would go into our second phase. And the differences between those 2 phases, we would open our strength area back up, but take certain equipment offline, make our squat racks every other squat rack, reduce doubles in our dumbbells, and then reduce some of our benches to space out that area a little better. We would eventually allow people to bring in their own equipment, but still not check out any equipment. Allow for shooting around in our field house, but not allow any games, like pickup games to occur. Slowly introduce intramurals, but limit it to more of those one-on-one sports. And then slowly reopen our relaxation room with a strict cleaning schedule. And then kind of in that third phase is when we start loosening the reins a little bit, allowing all of our cardio equipment to be used with strict cleaning, opening up more of our strength area, but still limiting people in that space with a strict cleaning schedule. Gradually introduce equipment checkout back into that, and then allow them to bring their own equipment, and then slowly introducing intramural sports back into that. And we would still do hybrid approaches to our demo classes, demo kitchen classes, health and wellness programs, and group fitness classes. We also came up with different programming for the fall and the spring. So we came up with 3 different calendars and kind of mapped that out for the entire year. One would be implemented in that red and yellow phase where we're all hybrid or all virtual. And then we have a hybrid calendar kind of in that green phase where some programs are virtual, some programs are in person with reduced class sizes. And then we have a blue calendar where if we are back to normal or what a new normal is, we would have all of our regular programming. And then just one other thing that we're adding is how we would digitally onboard our staff. So even if we are on campus during the fall semester, we don't want to bring all of our staff in at one time. We have about 100 staff among all program areas. So we're currently working on digitalizing all of our training material, putting that onto Microsoft Teams so that we can give them quizzes and PowerPoints, have them go over that, and then gradually bring them in smaller groups to do more hands-on training.
I was just going to say that any one of our panelists can jump in, but I definitely want to be sure to hear from Brian, because as a one-person department, I know things are really interesting for you right now. And I know many of our participants on this call may be in a similar situation. So do you want to tell us how things are going in your world?
Sure. And thanks for having me on here. So, one of the things, well, first off, let me just give you a perspective of where I'm coming from, and maybe some of the people in the chat can also relate. We at Oswego, we do not have a dedicated recreation center. We have multiple facilities spread out through campus. I have 2 fitness facilities. We have gymnasiums in other buildings. So again, we just don't have that dedicated rec space. In addition, I actually have not had many conversations with administration at all. We're not on the priority list yet, and rightfully so. There's lots of other things going on. So just in my head, I've been trying to envision, what does socially distancing look like in a fitness facility that is somewhat compact. And I've been looking at this through our mission and our vision, and maybe you guys have some of the same terminology, like you might have words like community, wellness, inclusion, safety, engagement, education. How can we still do those things in that socially distanced environment? And there's been a lot of great ideas thrown around on NERSA on how to do all this and still have that social distancing. But when I look at my facilities, the space is not there. And working with Mitch over the years, we have developed a great plan of getting a lot of equipment in a small space, and we've become actual masters at that over the years. But now it's going to kind of bite us a bit. So I'm proposing that we take over one of the gymnasiums in our institution and use that as a third location. My rec counterparts are probably going to be okay with that because, as some of you are noticing, intramurals and open recreation are going to be fairly limited. But can we provide space? Can we just provide that active space for students to move? So if I can offload cardio equipment, can I offload kind of some of the open space equipment, whether it be like kettlebells or mats, stability balls, kind of your stuff that you might find in a group fitness space in a gymnasium, then you can probably space stuff out to make it doable and then take the load off whatever's going to be left over in the other facilities. And again, I don't know what that's going to look like. How do you deal with weight equipment? As Whitney kind of mentioned, they're phasing it in, and that's not part of the first phase. You're using selectorized stuff, or you're using just strict cardio equipment. Who knows what the rules are going to be on that? I'm sure we'll get some stuff later. Group fitness, I think, we want to have the space for that, but in the gymnasium, maybe. I envision setting up almost a recording studio more for our group fitness, get the cameras out there, get some nice lighting, and have our instructors lead virtual classes. Because again, the safety part of students are going to feel safe, want to come in. But if we can at least offer that kind of virtual class experience, then that's going to be really valuable for some of our students to, again, try to maintain that stuff. And yeah, the other thing is just finding that space, a gymnasium, a ballroom, a larger open space, just to spread stuff out. And if I could do that, I feel like we can do the socially distancing. But again, for some of you guys with smaller facilities, or they get a lot of crowds, it's definitely going to be a challenge.
I mean, I agree with everything that Whitney and Brian said, and I sort of feel like the social distancing part within the facility might actually be the easiest of all of the components to consider, as we're thinking about reopening. Based on what my function is here, my mind automatically goes to 2 things. One, it's the business aspect of trying to reopen, and what does social distancing mean from the business perspective. So I'm going to throw a couple thoughts out there, not saying that I have the answer to that in any way, shape, or form, but things like, the virtual customer service. So we're hearing so much about the maintaining the ability to stay in contact with customers. And my husband works in retail, and he was making the comment yesterday that the phone's ringing off the hook, which traditionally the phone doesn't ring that much because people are, using computers and using text messaging and all kinds of other avenues. But there really is this need for that connection point that people are missing right now. And so how do we do our business different? The other part of that to me is sort of thinking about, if we're Binghamton University, our fitness center is on a fee-based model. So our students pay a mandatory recreation fee to participate in recreation, but then they also pay an additional membership fee to use the fitness center. And I know some other colleagues on the panel are also in that scenario. But if you're reducing access and if you're reducing time and the ability to use certain types of equipment or certain sections of the program in general, what does that mean from the business practice, and what kind of adjustments do we need to make? Can you feasibly, expect people to pay the same amount for what you were offering if you're offering reduced load? And so I think, yes, there's, we're working in the phased model. We're waiting for more guidance from our university in terms of, when we'll open and what that will look like. We're also tracking all of the national organizations, the NCAA, all of our professional orgs to look at best practices. But, I'm sort of starting to think about the nuances of reopening and what that looks like in this new normal that are far beyond the physical scope of what what we do with equipment and how we restrict access. So, yeah, I know that's not the best answer in terms of what to do, but I think it brings up a whole different subset of things that need to be thought about.
Yeah, and that's really valuable. I don't think there are any wrong answers today. And at the same time, there aren't any hard and fast answers either. So, Marie, do you want to go ahead next? And by the way, can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So good morning, everyone. The question is not an easy question to answer. We're at Stony Brook. We're located in the middle of Long Island, which is, pretty much the COVID capital of the world. And we get we're probably going to have very strict protocols when we do reopen. And we're waiting to that May 15th deadline where Governor Cuomo will, I guess, start rolling out the plans of New York and how we're going to reopen New York and Long Island specifically. But a lot of the other panelists, we're thinking along the same lines. And with Cindy, we are a fee-based department. So if we don't get student fees, we don't get money. And I think that is the biggest struggle right now is, what are our student fees? Are we going to be open in the summer? Are we going to open in the fall? And if we are open in the fall, what does that look like? Is that virtual? Are the students coming back to campus, or we're going to be doing a little bit of in-person or as well as virtual classes? So, and again, you can't charge the same fees when the facility isn't open the same amount of hours. We're restricting equipment, we're restricting programming. So again, that all has to be figured out. A budget has to be put in place to figure out how are we going to reopen. But if we do have a phase one, starting with making sure that our professional staff are safe. We need to have the people that are working to feel safe in an environment. And I see that as we would open up, but the rec center wouldn't open up, the department would open up, the facility would open up, and we'd start to manage the facility, making sure that all our professional staff have their own offices, they have their own special or safe workspace. Our student employees too, when they do come back, what does that look like for them? Again, we need to keep them safe as well. Limiting the number of people that come into the facility. Our facility is 84,000 square feet. So we do have a free weight area, which is very condensed. And like everyone else on the panel, we're not going to probably be doing open recreation in the future, in the immediate future. So we're looking to actually move our entire free weight area into our 3-court gymnasium so that we can control who goes in and who goes out. There's only 2 doors. Make one door an entrance, make the other door an exit, and then we limit the number of people, and we place all the equipment, which is a lot of an undertaking to move free weight equipment, but place it at least 6 feet apart, which we have the space to do that. With our cardio, we plan on taking every other piece of cardio offline. So that would give us the 6 feet that we do would require for social distancing, as well as we would probably get rid of all the shared equipment, the jump ropes, the mats, just to make sure that area does not get used by multiple people, because we have to ensure that every piece of equipment is clean. The fitness classes raises a challenge because studies have shown that COVID is on people's bottoms of their shoes. It can be brought in. So again, if we use a fitness studio wood floor and then the class goes in afterwards and someone touches the floor, and touches their face, they could actually get COVID. So again, someone brought that up yesterday, and that would require us to disinfect the floors after every class. So again, is that where we want to start with? Do we want to start virtual and then go in person? So again, those are all different kind of what we're thinking about as we move forward into opening. Intramurals are, we would not have at this time, but we also, our intramural fields are now field hospitals, and we don't plan on getting those back. Well, they're field hospitals staying on our fields until the fall. And then the cost to redo those field hospitals would probably be over $1 million to get those fields back. Our other sports complex is where the COVID testing is happening. So no one's allowed into that space. So unless you're getting a test for COVID. So those fields are offline, which is where our sport clubs practice. We do a lot of rentals. So we've already had to return $750,000 back in student fees since March. So our budget took a big hit. So again, our budget is really going to drive the operating hours of our facility. And again, at first, I think we're just going to start with, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, just to gradually go into it and then take it from there. And the good thing is that New York State's going to be one of the last to open up. So we can kind of look to our colleagues in other states to see how they're opening and their challenges that they face. So again, being the last one probably to open is probably to our benefit at this point.
Got it. Brandon, do you want to share from IUP's perspective?
Here at IUP, we have 3 facilities: fitness center, gymnasium, and group fitness studios. So when COVID first started to break out, we were actually on spring break. So our fitness center was still open for a couple of days. So we already started to do a little bit of social distancing, even though there wasn't a lot of people on campus. Cardio wise, what we did was put out order signs on every other piece of cardio equipment. And then every other day we'd rotate the signs. So that way cardio equipment was not being used on the same piece every day. So we're not putting a lot of miles on those pieces. Plate loaded and resistant machines, leaving the same. There's enough social distance between those. The dumbbell section's the big one. We removed a couple benches to keep the distance apart, but we can't control college students from moving those benches. So that's going to be the hard part when we go back to normal, or try to go back to normal, is making sure that college students don't move those benches. We have 2 functional training rooms, which are in racquetball courts. That's going to be a hard part with making sure we're not overloading those parts of the facility. So we're going to have to keep an eye on those, making sure people don't go into those too much. The gymnasium, that's a little bit of an unknown. Trying to think, everyone's been saying that. Open play, pick up basketball. I think it's going to be more 2 people per hoop type of thing, shooting around, just no pickup. Group fitness wise, I didn't even think about the floor thing. So we're going to be able to keep 6 feet apart, but bring up the floor thing, I think that's a little bit of an unknown now. I think it's just going to be individual sports. So video games, cornhole, 3-point competitions. I don't think 7-on-7 or basketball is going to be able to be played in the fall. So that's all I got for IEP right now.
Yeah, and Brandon, before we move on, I wanted to also ask you specifically about virtual programming, because I know you've seen a lot of success at IUP from implementing some digital options. So can you just quick go over what's been working well, and if this is just an interim solution for your campus, or whether you're thinking some things are here to stay?
Right when this started out, we were trying to think how we can stay connected with our students. So what we put in place was doing Instagram live classes for group fitness, and those took off really well. Our students are enjoying them, and even our instructors are really loving to be able to give back to the students and the community. So what we did was we taught 5 days a week, and we're still doing it right now, one class a day on Instagram Live. The great thing with teaching on Instagram Live is the class stays up for 24 hours. So you do not have to take the class live. So you can take it whenever it's convenient for you during the day. We've been getting great feedback. We average around 50 participants per class. We taught 30 classes so far, and we have over 2,500 participants, and that's just from the middle of March. So we're actually going to implement that into the summer. Usually when we go on summer break, we don't teach classes at all in person. So this is going to be the first time we're teaching classes virtually in the summer. So I'm curious to see if we get people taking our classes in the summer. I think when we come back in the fall and if we're in person, I'm going to keep on using virtual classes. If that's once a week on a Sunday, that might be a possibility. We don't want to do it full time because we want to try to get back to normal. We don't want to be living in fear where we can't be teaching classes in person. Another thing I did was did an intramural NBA 2K tournament for Xbox and PS4, and we got a great turnout for that. So we're doing 4 different types of sports this summer: NHL, Madden, Call of Duty, and FIFA. And then the third thing we're doing is 3 virtual events. So one, we're calling it an IEP Proud Virtual 5K. So all you have to do is go out on a walk or run, take a picture in IEP apparel, DM us on Instagram, Twitter, or email us, and you get put into a drawing for a gift card to our co-op store and a champion shirt. Another one we're doing is, so kind of like Tour de France, it's called the Tour de IEP, and we're doing a 2-stage race. Stage 1 is 5K distance, stage 2 is 10K distance. Then whoever has the fastest total time wins that event. And the third one is just a fastest time 5K race.
That's awesome. I know some of you already have touched on operational procedures and how those might change. But if anyone has anything to add on that topic, I think, Cindy, if you'd like to respond first to operational procedures and what you're thinking might change from staff roles and other perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, when I was, thinking about what are some of the key points that I wanted to bring up today, I mean, obviously, the risk management considerations are a huge element that we're looking at. And I have been in contact with and trying to work really closely with the university risk manager as well as university council to really start looking at things like, I think the first question that we asked was, are our student instructors, able to actually teach virtual classes online and still be covered for liability? And I think that is going to be very different from university to university. But I do think that, the initial reaction is to just kind of jump online and do everything online. But I do want to be thoughtful about how we integrate online instruction and whether or not we're covered. Some of the other areas of the department, like club sports and intramurals, have really started asking questions about if guidelines suggest that temperatures need to be taken and health sort of needs to be evaluated for team members and visiting teams, and as the teams are traveling, who's responsible for that, and what's the staff exposure to liability? Are we going to need new kinds of waivers and release forms within the facilities that sort of indicate that while we may be utilizing as many best practices as we're aware of and we've received guidance on, it certainly always is going to be possible that someone is going to get sick using, the facility or using the services that we're providing. So I want to be very thoughtful and mindful about those areas before we really get to a place of deciding what we can or what we can't do. We talked a little bit about the fiscal limitations, and I think Marie really kind of captured it very well from the standpoint of we also receive funding from the Student Association for our club sports and intramurals program. And, a lot of whether or not that funding is going to be available, there's two sort of pieces, right? It's what are the COVID restrictions and when are they lifted? And then what are the students back on campus? Are they paying those fees, and can the fees support those activities and services? So there's the risk management piece, there's the fiscal piece. And then if I take off my recreation hat and kind of flip on my Healthy Campus Initiative hat on campus, there are a lot of conversations right now really about the holistic, well-being of our members and our students as we move forward. And I think the three biggest strategies, that I'm sort of considering from the wellness perspective are thinking about trauma-informed practice, right? And so COVID has really hit people in different ways. And there are a lot of people that are, they're really hesitant, they're really nervous, they're going to be scared. But on the flip side of that scale, you're going to have patrons and members that are going to come back and want to just go back to the old normal and, be ready to move on. And so how do you balance those two very different, perspectives of members, and really thinking about how your practices sort of encourage mental well-being, that you're acting with the principles of, safety, developing trust among your membership, that you're minimizing physical and emotional safety, and that, we're trying to find that balance of allowing people to be social and enjoy what recreation has to offer and the value that brings, but do it safely. So it's sort of looking at what are the users going to look like and be like when they come back into the building. And then the other piece of it is, preparing the staff. Are the staff really prepared to deal with this new set of circumstances? So we've talked a lot about, cleaning procedures and, staff safety. I have also been looking at, are our staff trained and qualified to be able to recognize when someone is exhibiting signs of, severe trauma? Are they depressed? Are they high anxiety? I imagine that there's going to be some people that are going to be angry. And so all of us that work in customer service know that that is going to manifest itself in different ways as students are coming back into the facility and using our services. So, preparing the staff to be able to do their customer service jobs as best as they can do, but know that sort of the game has changed a little bit, and are we prepared to react to that? And then the last thing that I'll say is, I was talking with a number of colleagues yesterday in a different meeting, and we were talking about the value of language and the terminology and the language that we use with our marketing and our policies and our postings, so that we're not creating additional anxiety and fear and stress with people. And so word choice really matters, in how you're framing up those messages. And it's hard because I think that media sometimes provokes that. And so, looking at, again, like, what are the best resources, what are the best practices, and how can we articulate those best practices in a way that are positive and encouraging and not sort of creating more anxiety, if you will. So, that's me with my wellness hat on, kind of trying to juxtapose that with all of the physical, restrictions and what recreation has to do, financially, but, that we need to be very thoughtful and mindful about what the patrons look like when they come back.
Yeah, I think all of that is great and very important. So thank you, Cindy. Does anyone else have anything on the topic of operational procedures that are going to be changing that you would like to add at this point from the panel?
Yeah, I know at Stony Brook, frequent hand washing announcements will be made like every 15 minutes. We're going to be putting signage everywhere, again, with doors. one-way in entrance doors, exit doors, so that people aren't touching everything. Our custodial staff, we'll hire possibly more custodial just to get those high usable areas like the door handles, the locker rooms, to get them wiped down. We're looking to do appointment only. Usually within our department, students just walk in and they kind of talk to us and have meetings. I think we're going into the appointment only model, not allowing anyone in our administrative office unless you have an appointment. So I think that's kind of where we're looking to do a lot more in appointment or virtual appointments to minimize the interaction with students on a daily basis. So.
Yeah, and I'll just add a couple other things with that. We thought a lot about the same things everyone else is thinking about with, one entrance, one exit, reducing operational hours. Just a couple other things that we thought about was cones or taping on the floor to exhibit social distancing, especially at our desks where people would be asking questions or would be congregating. Propping all of the doors open to limit high touch point areas. We've got obviously an elevator in our facility, limiting that to, one or two people at a time. Our environmental services staff brought up our water filling stations. So only allowing water bottle filling stations and not normal water fountains. We've got like patio furniture. We've talked about either removing all of the patio furniture or taking away some seats from some of those tables. And then currently we have a LEED certified building. So we have no paper towel dispensers in any of our bathrooms. So we've talked about installing paper towel holders, but that would require, sacrificing the LEED certification. So it's kind of on our senior leadership team to give us the go ahead if we need to install those paper towel holders.
All right, unless Brandon or Brian has anything else.
I can chime in just quickly for Cindy was talking a little bit about the student staff. That's going to be a different dynamic when we return. I will assume that we'll have for the state of New York, we'll probably have some guidelines coming down about how that's going to look. But they're going to have to be aware of, this is going to be a different experience for them. If they're a front desk employee, what's the front desk operation going to look like? Understanding that you're probably going to be wearing a mask. We're going to have to provide a mask. We're going to provide disinfectant. Are there going to be temperature checks for our staff? And that's going to be a new reality. And some of our staff might not be comfortable with that. We have to understand that, hey, that's okay. If you don't want to work here at the moment, and when things are better, you might have your job when you'll have your job when you come back. Because it's definitely, it's going to be, again, challenging for some of the staff to be in that environment. And then also just training, just getting them, especially new staff, onboarded. You can't do the big group stuff anymore. So maybe having some online, using either Blackboard or whatever your online stuff is on campus will be helpful. So just something for you guys to think about is, again, how the student staff, being in constant communication with them over the summer and just getting them mentally prepared for what this could potentially look like for their job, especially for those that are returning.
Add in, I don't know how other facilities do it, but how we do it at IEP is the customers hand us their card and we swipe them in.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're going to be going to the customer just swipes and we hit enter, or our staff's going to be wearing gloves and they take the card and swipe. So that's something we're going to have to think about. And I'm sure a lot of other facilities are in the same boat.
So we have card swipes. So what we're going to do is put the card swipes on the other side so the students can swipe themselves in. And then what we'll do is we'll just hit the enter button if their ID card comes up and then allow them into the facility. So we're going to get away from us taking cards and swiping. And if that doesn't work, we could always put in their student ID number. If they verbally tell us what it is, we can manually put it into the system.
We use what we call like prox readers. So they just sit right on top of the desk, and the students or employees just come in and tap their card. They don't even have to take it out of their phone and touch their card. They can have it like in a wallet pocket on their phone and just tap their card, so they don't have to have the student workers touch it or anything like that, which has been really helpful.
That's great. Those are both good solutions, I think. Let's shift gears in the interest of time. I know we have a lot of questions that have been submitted in the chat, and so I'd like to turn the corner into that session. If you still have a question to ask and you're a participant, you can still add questions, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. But we've gotten a few questions on athletic training facilities, and if it's an athletes only weight room, do any of our panelists have guidance on what you're doing? Are you going to limit availability of that facility? Any thoughts?
We're not an athletic facility.
We share our building with athletics. They have a separate area kind of on the opposite wing of the building, where they have their athletic locker rooms, their athletic training facility. And they also heavily utilize our fitness center, since it's really the only fitness center on campus. There's a section on my protocols and opening procedures that just has athletics ? Because they really haven't gotten a lot of guidance on how they would, social distance in an athletic training facility. So we're waiting kind of on them in athletics to provide us with that guidance on how to reopen their area. I saw some questions about the pool as well. The pool is also an athletics court, so we haven't really done much with the pools. And as far as like locker rooms, in that first phase, we were just going to shut all of the lockers down. And we've got a ton of cubbies on our main fitness floor, and just having them use those cubbies, and then eventually starting to open up maybe every other 2 lockers that people can use, and kind of rotating those. But yeah, athletic training and athletics is kind of still a mystery for us too.
So we are not an athletic facility either. They have their own separate space. However, I have had some conversations with the director of athletics, but what I will offer to the group is that the National Athletic Training Association does have some really good protocols on their webpage about how their reintegration plan would look for student athletes. So that might be a good resource to check out. And then USA Swimming, I think it is, also has some protocols available online for social distancing within the aquatic center. And from what I have read from them, as well as the CDC, is it does seem like the pool is an option as long as you can social distance both on the deck and within the water.
Okay, those sound like good resources, Cindy. I don't know how easy it would be for you to pull that up and share those links in the chat, but if you're able to, that'd be great. Or if not, we could connect after, and maybe I can add it to my email I sent out to all registrants.
I'm more than happy to do that, yep.
Okay, question number 2. Has thought been given to facilities that have joint spaces that allow visitors or community members that use the fitness centers? I know not all of our panelists have that type of situation, but what is your plan for community guests, I guess, in your facility?
Well, right now, when we start to open, we're not going to allow any guests into the facility. So it's strictly going to be students, faculty, staff, anyone that has a membership or who wants to purchase that's eligible. And then we'll see how that goes. And then again, maybe in the fall, we can implement back the guest policy. But at this point, we want to minimize the amount of people in the facility.
We're in the same boat as Oswego, no guests, and same thing what Marie just said.
We're strictly open for students, faculty, and staff. And then we just implemented a family rec user pass policy this past January. And it's a brand new program, so we only had a couple participants. So I can imagine we would still allow families of our employees to access the facility once we do open, but we're not open to outside community members.
Makes sense. Another question is about third-party user discussions on any of your campuses. In other words, rentals, games/events. I guess that's just asking, are you going to be allowing any outside events coming to your facilities in the near future?
We have a lot of rentals at Stony Brook. So I have a meeting tomorrow actually about the permits, the revocable permits. But like I said, our intramural fields, which is one of our rental spaces, is being taken over by the field hospital. So that is completely done. And then our other facility, which is our sport club facility / another rental area, is taken over by the COVID testing. So we don't anticipate at this point being able to use any of our facilities, and we probably generate around 150,000 just in the summer for rentals, which we're going to be losing. And again, in hindsight, it's fine. Like if we need the field hospitals, they're there for people to use if we needed it. So we have to weigh the good with the bad, but this is for the public health. So at this point, we will not have any rental facilities, and I don't think they're allowing any rental groups back until the fall anywhere on campus.
Yeah, I think Binghamton's in the same spot, I think, is what Oswego and Stony Brook mentioned. We were canceled through the summer, but fall is still a question mark. And the biggest area that we're looking at right now is the ability to use the challenge ropes course, which is an outdoor facility. And the bulk of our interactions really start in like late July, early August, and then run into the beginning of the academic school year with groups that are training. So there's sort of a question mark on, you know, whether or not we will still be able to do that. Can you actually do that in a social distancing model, and what does that look like? So we haven't given up all hope on late summer, early fall, you know, ropes course stuff, but that there's still a question mark there.
Another question is, does anyone have any apps you are using for scheduling or planning to use for scheduling time slots to work out? That's super high tech. I don't know if anybody's at that point.
We currently don't use one, but I've been in a couple roundtable discussions, and a lot of people are using IM Leagues and having people sign up for certain time blocks and then checking them in when they come into the building.
We use Fusion as our member management software, and we're trying to evaluate what capacity Fusion might have to be able to provide us with some of that, you know, sign up.
Okay, let's see. Has anyone had any discussions as to the option of having students reserve gym time? Is that something that all of you are thinking of, or not yet?
We don't anticipate open recreation in the first phase. So at this point now, we're not looking to reserve because it would be a small number of people that would be able to have the space available.
Yeah, we weren't really thinking about sign-up times. We're a small campus, about 1,600 students, so we're not hugely overwhelmed at any one period anyway. But we plan on limiting the amount of people that come into the building, as well as the amount of people in each area. So we talked about you know, putting stanchions up or signage up about how many people could be in each area at one time. So that's kind of how we were planning on monitoring that.
We may be looking into some headcount stuff, and if anybody has any potential software where we can say like there's a set number of people that can be in a fitness facility, can that be like something they can see online immediately? So we can have our front desk person tracking that. So if someone's, off campus and they're like, oh, can I go to the gym? Well, no, they're at their capacity right now. So if anybody in the chat has any suggestions for that, that's just something I'm thinking in the future, that if that becomes an issue and we have to have some head counts, is there something that we can get to our students and members that says this is what it looks like right now?
We use DSE for our head counts. So we set up each area and our student workers will go around and do head counts every hour. So it doesn't really translate onto our website, but I think we could have them submit it to our full-time staff and, update that hourly so people could go on and look, but it doesn't update automatically.
Brian, I will say that our institutional IT department was able to create like an app for that the students can see on the portal, on their banner portal when they log in. So during the normal school year, we have the building sectioned off into a couple different areas. The student employees input on a half an hour basis what the head counts are in those spaces, and it calculates a % occupancy in real time so that students across campus can log into that portal and see that real time usage. I do think that there are some apps out there that will do that we used to use, but the university was able to kind of create that for us.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Another question that came in was how will you know if you're using a phased approach to kind of your plan? How will you know when to go into the next phase?
I think we'll base a lot of it off of, what our state is doing, as well as CDC guidelines, the amount of cases coming in. But I think a lot of our senior leadership team will have a say in, okay, yeah, now you're good to move to the next phase. And our phased approach is only internal. Our entire campus is going into the color-coded system, but that phased approach is only for our fitness center. So we plan on being a little more stringent than, a lot of the other buildings and areas on campus.
Okay. We have a question if anyone knows of any new rules on saunas. Does anyone have a sauna on campus that could speak to? Maybe if anyone has an answer in the chat, go ahead and shoot over a quick answer for John, who asked that question. Are any of you considering, for intramurals, one-on-one sports like tennis or badminton?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about, really focusing even in the club sport capacity. So if clubs are able to, convene in some way, that the focus might be on individual skill development and individual workouts versus, a playing scenario. But from the intramural perspective, I think one of the other panelists kind of mentioned similar things like 3-point contest, cornhole is pretty popular on our campus. Definitely tennis, individuals tennis. We have a disc golf course on campus, so I think we can socially distance and play that. As well as, there's sort of a question mark about, whether or not we can institute golf, which isn't something that we typically would do, excuse me, but might be an opportunity. And then one of the local golf courses here that we've worked with in the past has foot golf, which is basically the equivalent of soccer golf. So again, things that are outdoor or, really could be done as an individual or in a pair that is socially distanced.
We definitely talked about that too, kind of within our second phase of opening our building, is doing more of the one-on-one intramurals. But it still begs the question of, you're still touching that equipment and then the other person's touching the equipment. So, just making sure you have proper cleaning protocols for returning that equipment if you are borrowing some, or, making those groups of students that did sign up for that intramural sport to bring their own equipment. So, we've been trying to come up with proper cleaning guidelines that we can give to our students, where if they're returning a racket, how do you clean off all of it, and stuff like that too.
I know there was also a question about some at-home equipment packages that, if anyone's looking for that type of solution in an interim capacity. I know it was already answered a bit in the chat, but we are looking into ways as Advantage to be able to provide a solution like that. So just reach out to us if that's something you're interested in. We can probably make that happen for you. Well, as we wrap up, if everyone could get ready in the chat, we have a really quick question for all participants. Just a quick poll. If this roundtable has been helpful and you would be interested in joining another roundtable discussion in the future, give us a yes in the chat so that we can know and plan for that. We definitely want to provide this if it's helpful, but we need your feedback. Later today, we will be distributing a recording of this discussion to all registrants via email, and we would also love to hear your feedback on this session. So that email will also contain a link to a quick survey where you'll be able to submit ideas for topics if you're interested in joining a roundtable in the future. So we are about out of time at this point, but I definitely want to say, if any of you have follow-up questions after the call, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If any of you need to get in touch with one of the panelists because you have specific questions as to what they said, I'm sure we can help make that connection. So once again, we very much want to thank all of our participants for joining in, and especially our panelists for their contributions and for leading our discussion so well. And with that, I hope you all have a safe and healthy weekend. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.